Chris Petri here. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming by. We're actually working on an absolutely phenomenal tutorial today. We're actually going to cover the exciting, fresh, clean, pure colors of your palette. So you can create a gorgeous, exciting painting like this by basically just using your colors right straight from your palette without using much water at all. So we're going to kind of show you that technique of the Prima technique. This is the Prima technique at its best, where you're really going to go in and use mostly fresh, squeezed, moist tube paint right from your palette. And then at the very, very end of the painting, you might add in a little light wash with some extra water for your light blue washes around your subject matter here on your windows in the background, or your table here, your kitchen countertop. But all of these exciting things here, you have bouquets of flowers, olive oil, salt and pepper. We have some tomatoes, asparagus. We have beautiful lemons. We have a coffee cup and a gorgeous red delicious apple. And we have a cookbook here, and we have a beautiful orange Dutch oven. So you're gonna have all these fun, exciting things in your painting, and you're not going to have to really rely on using much water at all. Actually, you won't use hardly any water whatsoever. We're going to go over that technique here on this video, so stay tuned, buckle in, strap up, get ready. We're going to go through it bit by bit, and by the end of this video, you'll have created a wonderful painting, an exciting painting, and I think one that you're going to probably pin up on your wall, maybe even put up in a frame. And you'll be using that as your guide going forward, that when you're doing an Prima painting, you're going to know exactly what you are looking for, the end goal. Okay, so we'll get started just in a second. All right, welcome everybody. Chris Petri here. We just saw the finished painting, so we're going to get started here with our process for our painting. We're going to kind of key in on really using the strength and the power of straight tube paint right out of the tube. We have our palette here. You can see that I have all my fresh squeezed tube paints right in this palette here. This is a Schmincke palette. And I have all my colors, and if you need my colors, you can just type in Chris Petri palette into YouTube, and I've got like 10, maybe 5, or maybe like 8 or 9 or 10 videos on my palette colors and different palettes I use, and I cover all kinds of interesting palette information on some of my previous videos going back a couple of years or so. So always utilize my previous videos. Go back and look at those. You'll have a ton of information there. I put a lot of information and chock full of nuts, tidbits of information in all my videos. So those will be great for you if you're just kind of getting started. So if you're just kind of, coming to my YouTube channel and you're just starting out, maybe you've been here a couple months or a couple weeks or whatever, welcome to. If you're just starting out here on my channel, thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate that. And I feel like I want you to feel confident with what I'm doing here. So when I'm just mentioning the fact that I have other prior videos, this way you can go back and kind of do some searching on my previous videos to kind of get up to speed. So, you won't be feeling like you don't have enough information. There's plenty of information. I have a lot of videos, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube. You just have to type in my name, Chris Petri, and you just type in whatever information you're looking for. So if you want to type in palette, that means you'll get like 10 or 15 of my palette videos, and they might be, from a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or if you want to type in Chris Petri flowers, and you want to paint a flower painting, I might have 20 or 30 previous videos on flowers. So if you want to do nothing but flower paintings, don't feel like you don't have enough information. You can go back and look at my archived flower paintings on YouTube. So my archives are an incredible way to, I'm digressing right now, but if you want to look up my previous videos, you just type in my name, really simple, Chris Petri, and whatever you want to, seascapes, landscapes, boat paintings, lighthouses. I've done literally 10, 20, 30 lighthouse paintings, 50 or 60 flower paintings. I've done all of these. I've got hundreds and hundreds of videos. So go back, feel free. Or if you just want to kind of go week by week and you really aren't so interested in going back in time and you just want to kind of go forward, that's fine too. I'm going to cover all of the information that you're going to want with watercolor. I cover all of the subject matter you're going to want: flowers, still life, landscapes, seascapes, city scenes, portrait paintings, figure painting, just the whole gamut of watercolor. And everything is just simple. It's drawing and then painting. So it's really the 50-50. You draw first, you get your drawing completed, and then the second part is you get your watercolor painting done. So we're going to do that right here. And this actual video here, we're going to cover using, again, fresh squeezed 2 paints. A lot of watercolor artists kind of go in and they add too much water to their paint mixtures, and they wind up having a very, very, like, I would say non-exciting painting, because they're letting too much of that water wash out and really dilute their exciting colors that they have. So always remember, you have all these exciting colors right here. Don't let too much water ruin your paintings. So we're going to show you exactly how to do it right now. Okay, let's start. First thing is, we've been talking about this for a while. I always mention this in my videos. Try to start using mattes with your watercolor paintings. Try to always start out with the finished size of the painting you're going to want to create by using a matte first. And this way, if you do use a matte and you make a pencil line around this window of this matte, that means at least you're going to have a painting that you can just draw. You can go out and purchase a matte and purchase a frame. It all fits together. You don't have to do anything complicated. You can just basically go to a local hobby shop, your local big box hobby stores. You go to a frame shop. You can go online and order some mats and some frames, really simple. And you won't have to do any kind of very expensive customizing of frames and mats and things like that. I've gone through that myself, and it's been a lot of headaches. I'm trying to save you the headaches. So the first thing we do is you have your watercolor paper. You might have a sheet of watercolor paper. You have that. You take it. You tape it down to your table. You might be working with an easel. You tape it on your easel. I'm using some Scotch tape. So I'm just going to make sure I tape down my watercolor paper really securely. You don't want your watercolor paper moving around when you're painting and drawing. You have to make sure it's nice and secure. So you could use Scotch tape. You can use artist tape, whatever you want. Maybe we'll use both. So here we go. We put some Scotch tape down first, just to get our watercolor. This actually happens to be Arches rough paper. Arches rough, 140, 300 gram, 300 grain. Now we have a mat here. Let's take a look. Let's see what the mat is. This is a 6.5 inch by 4.5 inch matte window, and the overall frame size from outside to outside is a 10 by 8. So an 8 by 10. 8, you can kind of see that, an 8 by 10 frame size. That's going to be your frame size. And then your window opening is, again, about 4.5, a little bit better than that, 4 5/8 by 6.5. So if you start out with your standard size mat that you buy in the store, you can't go wrong. So let's do that. Let's take this and put it down and say, okay, let's use an office pencil and just make 4 dots. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm making 4 dots right at the corners of this mat. Then I lift up my mat, I put it to the side, and I say, okay, those are my 4 corners. Let's at least go larger than that. So let's make it, let's just go above that. Let's use tape. Let's not even bother using rulers or anything. Let's just use some tape. Let's use some artist tape and say, let's make this larger by a little bit. Like, let's use the entire paper. Okay, so I'm going to take some artist tape, some drafting tape. Pro is the brand, Pro drafting tape. They make great drafting tape. You can use this with any paper, any watercolor paper, and it's not going to tear up your watercolor paper when you use this tape. That's why I like to use quality tape if you can, They also make some great tape you can buy at like your local big box hardware stores, like, your huge big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's. Purple tape. Purple tape works great. This is Scotch delicate surface painter's tape. So this is what your professional painters use that are out there painting homes, painting large commercial properties, people that are in the professional business of painting. They use this Scotch delicate surface tape for painting. They use it to maybe tape off moldings, trim work inside interiors. This way they can just tape over everything and then paint and then lift up the tape real easy. It won't tear any of the paint or any of the surfaces. It's a very, very delicate tape, fantastic tape. So you can use that as well. Maybe we'll use some of that here. Let's use a couple strips of this. So I'll just go over on the side over here. Like that. Okay. And then always remember when you're doing your painting and you're doing your tape first before you paint, just remember that you just want to make sure that this portion of the tape, just the edge that touches the watercolor paper where you're working is pressed down along the paper. This outside edge doesn't matter as much. I mean, you want it to be, everything to be, you want to press everything down, but especially right along these edges where the paper is, your watercolor paper, that you want to make sure is kind of good and pressed down really nicely. This way no paint seeps underneath your tape. So we have our tape all set up on our paper. And now what we're going to do is, since this doesn't look so pleasing, let's remove this. This kind of purple tape doesn't look great on camera, so that's the only reason I'm removing this purple tape. It doesn't look great on the camera here. It's going to distract you, I think, maybe, perhaps. So I'll just take more Pro drafting tape just to finish off over here. That's the thing about making videos. If you eventually want to make YouTube videos, you have to kind of be conscious and aware that certain things, are going to look a little bit odd and strange on your videos. So you want to kind of keep things looking good and kind of uniform and pleasant looking. So that looks more pleasant looking. All the same tape going all the way around like that. And let's get started. And again, we did at least, we put our mat down first and we put our 4 dots, 1, 2, 3, and 4 with our pencil. So at least we know this is sort of our area that we want to paint within. But then we can go a little larger. So you can kind of take it and make it a little larger if you want. So I'm just going to make a pencil line like this, just to kind of let myself know, yeah, let's paint out a little beyond those 4 points where the mat is. So this way when we set our mat down and we're going to set up our painting inside this mat, we can move it around a little bit and say, oh, it looks a little better over there, or a little bit over here, or a little bit over there. You have room to move your mat around a little bit for your painting. Okay, so we have that all set up. So essentially we're looking good. Now the next thing is we're going to do our drawing. Let's get started with our drawing. I'm going to use a mechanical pencil, a number 9, 0.9 millimeter. This is a Pentel mechanical pencil. These are absolutely great pencils. You don't have to worry about sharpening them. You just click the bottom of the top of the pen and you get extra lead right away. So this works great. You have that instant point of your pencil. You just have to just press and you have more point and more pencil lead to draw. And what I'll do is, we're looking for a real vibrant looking painting with lots of color, and we're going to use lots of fresh squeeze tube paint, and I don't think we're going to use much water at all. So this is a real fun exercise and a fun painting to do that's going to show you that you really don't have to use a lot of water, and a lot of times it's to your advantage that you don't use too much water. All right, let's get started. First thing I'll do is I'm going to draw a vase over here. So I'm going to do a vase over here like so. And then I'm going to do some flower shapes over here. And I'm just going to kind of go around and kind of get a bouquet, shape of a bouquet, if that's okay. So, and there we have it. Now if I tone down my lights a little bit more, you'll see that a little more. So you can kind of see how I did the vase here, and then the bouquet, just the rough outline of the bouquet. And I'm just doing this, I'm creating this out of my own, ideas here. I'm not really trying to, I'm trying to just create something improvisational. I'm improving here. Maybe we'll make a little, making a coffee mug here maybe. Like that. Okay, so I have a coffee mug and a vase of flowers. And a little shadowing here, some shadowing on underneath the vase. And then maybe over here I'm going to have a tomato. Let's do a tomato here with some shadowing underneath it. And another tomato here, and maybe another one here, a smaller one like so. And we'll have some shadowing under our tomatoes here. So I'm just doing some small, items of subject matter here, some tomatoes. So I just make a little spots of light on our tomatoes here, so I know to leave a little bit of white paper there. And what else do we have? Let's have some onions or asparagus or something. Maybe some asparagus, some greens, maybe some veggies and things. We're going to maybe be cooking some dinner or some lunch. So we're thinking of having some lunch and dinner. So we have some asparagus here. And then what else might we have here? Well, maybe we might have over here, maybe we'll have a lemon here, a few lemons. Over here. And then let's believe this is maybe a kitchen here. So we're working along a kitchen area. So we're on the kitchen countertop. There's a beautiful bouquet of flowers on the kitchen countertop, and we're making some food, some dinner, something like that, some lunch, some dinner. We have some things out here. And then we just have some window panes here. So maybe there's a large window here in the kitchen along the countertops. And we just kind of make some indications of some window frames like this. And this is the backsplash here. And then if you kind of see, like maybe, I'm thinking maybe I need to modify this a little bit. Like, so this might be the backsplash. We need to make the window frames. So let's erase a little bit. You can always erase a little bit here and there. So let's make the window frames over here. Like this. So these are the window frames actually, right across here. Like that. So these are the window frames here. And then this is like maybe the, we have a little backsplash here, and a little backsplash and a little bit of a window sill. Maybe we'll make a little, maybe we'll have a little, we'll have some olive oil here. So this might be a little jar of olive oil there on top of the sill. We're just kind of, maybe a salt and pepper shaker here. And we're just doing a little fun stuff here. So there's a salt and pepper shaker there, a little bit of shadows underneath here. And what else do we have? So we have that. And then, well, I'm just trying to think if we could put anything else in here. I had a couple smudges here on the paper. We'll see if we can clean this up a little bit. We might be able to go over that with some white paint. We'll see what we can do with that. Maybe you can, let's see if we can erase this here. All right, so that's working a little bit. Sometimes if you have a smudge or something on your paper, Maybe you can erase it with an eraser a little bit, see if you can get that up. It might be some paint or something else. Stuff is always getting messed up, right? When we work with watercolors, there always tends to be smudges somewhere or some kind of stuff going on like that. Smudges and splashes and spatters and kinds of things like that. Don't let it get to you. You can leave it in there. It makes the watercolor look more interesting, I guess. So, then now what I'll do is I'll just add some flower shapes as I go through here, just to give myself the So what I'll do is I'll just kind of give myself the indications of some flowers within this bouquet, but nothing too definite. I think that's the fun part about watercolor. Sometimes don't worry about it. When you're doing your pencil drawing, just leave it loose, leave it fun. You can create as you paint. So that's a good thing to remember. You can create things as you paint them. You don't always necessarily, when you're doing your pencil drawing, have to have everything all 100% worked out. You can kind of leave things loose, kind of just get yourself some general ideas. You know, you can see here I'm working on my pencil drawings and I'm penciling in everything that I want to get in here, but, you know, I'm not getting too overly concerned with things. And I think over here I'm going to do a book, like so. So I'm going to have like a book here, like this, and this could be a recipe book. So we're going to have some recipes here in this book. And there we go, we'll have a book here. Just like that, we'll have a book for some recipes when we're cooking. And then maybe we'll have a pot here. We'll have a nice pot. And then maybe we'll make a top on the pot here. Like this, we'll have an interesting crock pot, or we might have like a nice Dutch oven over here, and then some shadowing under here. So you always want to make sure we have some shadows under our lemon. All right, so that's good. We have a basic sketch of what we want to do. And again, we're going to use the power of pure colors right from the tube, fresh squeezed tube paint right onto the paper. And again, we're not going to use much water at all for this painting, just so you can kind of see how using fresh tube paint can be an incredible advantage for your watercolors. So we're going to try it out, and you're going to try this at home in your studio. And I know you're doing a great job out there. You're doing a fantastic job painting, drawing and painting in watercolors. And you're also learning all new kinds of techniques and methods all the time here on my channel. So get excited. You're going to actually, when you're finished with this composition, you're going to kind of walk away from it, I think, feeling very happy, very excited that you've kind of really zoned in on the fact that you don't have to always add so much water. Sometimes you can just work nothing but straight paint in a painting, and your painting might turn out to be incredibly beautiful. So let's try it out and see what happens, okay? All right, we'll be right back. We're just going to take a break, and we'll come back and start painting. Okay, we're getting started again, and we're going to actually just kind of make a reminder for ourselves. We always try to put a light insignia at the top of our painting. So I'm going to do that. You'll see me do that here very, very often. Most times I do this. Now this just signifies where the light's coming from, and we can kind of see from this spotlight, it's coming from back, it's coming from in front of us, shining this way. So you can imagine the light's coming through this kitchen window here. So we have a kitchen window, and the light's coming through the kitchen window, and it's putting some shadows on things, but nothing too drastic. So it might be that the sun is high in the sky, midday, but we do nonetheless have some light coming through this kitchen window right here on the top of the watercolor painting here. And that's going to give us a little bit of shadowing under our objects and And we also have some lighting inside of our room here too. There might be windows behind us and in front of us, or to the sides of us, or there might be a really bright kitchen light inside this room. But we're going to create our own light and say, for the most part, light's coming mostly from behind us through the window, and then also we have some light in the room, some ambient lighting inside this room. So that kind of helps us just to figure out where our shadows are going to be. And we're going to continue on here, and we're going to grab our, I'm going to put some fresh, clean water in my water container. And sometimes I'll use a brush and I'll kind of stir around the water container just to get all the previous colors underneath on the bottom of the container. So I use an old fan brush. I probably had this from when I was working, years ago, doing like Bob Ross paintings and William Alexander oil paintings, the wet on wet methods, going back 30 years ago. So I do that. I kind of get my water pail all prepped up and ready to go. And I'll get some fresh, clean water and put that in the water pail over here. I use some bottled water, fresh, clean water. I'm going to use I'm going to start out with a simple travel brush, a number 4 Da Vinci Maestro. Or actually, it's just a Da Vinci travel brush, number 4 size. And we'll see how this works out. So we're going to start out, we'll do some straight paint, no water basically, just a damp brush. We'll do some greens and blues, green and blue, and then a little bit of burnt sienna, just to warm it up a little bit. And then we're just going to start doing our vase here. And let's just do that. Let's keep these. We're doing alla prima painting right now. Alla prima painting is very simply painting everything at one time. We're not doing any glazing or anything like that. We're just going to paint our subject matter as we go, just like that. So you can see I'm doing the vase here, like so. And then I usually have a tissue on hand like this, and I can tap off a little bit of paint or water on my tissue as I go, or you could use an apron. I'm wearing an apron too, so sometimes I'll use the apron to, and this is some green, so I'm going to put some green in here. Then I'll mix some greens, some more interesting greens here. Let's go with some cadmium lemon yellow, cadmium yellow lemon, some raw umber. Just make some interesting golden yellow colors. We don't want it all the same green. And then we're going to actually start to create some, and again, I'm just improvising. I'm going to make the flowers in this painting, I think, a really beautiful, like purplish pink. So let's go with some alizarin crimson up here, and some rose madder, and maybe some ultramarine violet, which is a purple color. So I want to kind of make this a purpley pink for some beautiful pinkish purple colors for our flowers here. And then I'm just going to do that. I'm going to start just dropping in some colors here and there. Just, have fun, improv this. Don't feel like you have to do anything serious. Just have fun, dab some paints on the paper, and start to create some flower shapes. And then what I'll do is I'll rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water on the tissue, and then I'll start to just soften out those colors a little bit so that you get a little softening of colors. Maybe a little more purple there. Rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit, pick up some purple, like that. Rinse off the brush, fresh, clean water. Now what we're doing here is, since the light's coming through the windows behind us, you're going to see more lighter colors around the outside edges of the flowers. And then toward the center of the flowers, it's going to be a little darker in tonal value, I should say. And then here in the center, of the bouquet, you're not going to have as much light effects, but nonetheless, we're going to just get some, I'll splash a little bit too, just to get some splashing going, like that. And again, please have fun with this. This is about having fun. The main thing is we're not using a ton of water. You can kind of see I'm sort of just, I mean, these, I'll admit that these flowers are a little bit more water in them. So there is some more water in the flowers that we're making in this bouquet. So those are like medium tonal values. Not so much straight paint. But this might be like the only area that we might have a lot of, or somewhat of, a decent amount of water in the mix, but that's about it. And then when we go back in and get our greens for the, see, we have the greens here. And again, we don't want to fill in the whole bouquet. Let's leave lots of white paper here and there inside that bouquet. And let's add in some of this golden green. We don't want everything dark green. Let's make sure we have some. And a little more here, just a couple splashes. Okay. And then we're going to start going in. Let's get some background here. Let's start to think about the wood trim. There's some wood trim over here. So we're going to do some wood trim like colors, some raw umber, burnt sienna, a little bit of brown, burnt umber. And let's start getting that in there. Almost straight paint. There's not much water in this at all. You can kind of see that, right? There's no dripping of water or puddles of water here. It's pretty much straight paint. And I'll just start to weave that right in to the painting, like that, like this. Maybe some yellow ochre. Okay, so you can kind of see here we're kind of weaving together a nice, beautiful, some flowers. Bouquet of flowers. We left lots of white paper in there. Can you see that? And then you certainly can go in and add some straight rose madder in there too. Here and there, just touches of straight paint into the wet, moist paper that you have. And that gives it even more interesting colors and variation. Okay. Then we can add a little of that red to the vase too, just to have a little bit of harmonizing of colors. Then we're going to go in and get some blue for some shadowing here. Like this. So we have a little shadowing on that vase. Then we said we're going to do some lemons over here. Let's get some lemon colors in. Straight paint. Just go straight into your cadmium yellow lemon. Just go in there. Make a couple of lemons. Straight paint. No water. Just use straight paint right out of your palette. Just like that. And then let that be. Maybe you want to go in and get a touch of that bluish green. Maybe for some shadowing underneath there. Just to kind of add that in there. To the bottom of the lemons. And we'll let that sit a few minutes. Maybe you can even get some cerulean blue down here. And maybe we'll do a little shadowing like so. Under there, like that. And then when we do that, let's add some yellow. Straight tube paint to these lemons. Like that, with some shadowing. Good, perfect. Now, we'll do a little shadowing in here in the cup, coffee cup. And then maybe we're going to have an interesting French ultramarine blue, straight paint, no water. We'll do some interesting, there's some interesting cup details here, so let's do that. Let's do this, little interesting cup details like that. Maybe there's a blue handle for this cup, coffee cup like that. Then a little bit of shadowing underneath, like so. Just like that. There we go. Straight paint. There we go. Now let's come over here and we're going to start doing some tomatoes and an apple. Maybe 2 tomatoes and an apple. Let's try our cadmium red. Straight paint, no water. There we go. 1 tomato there. Our second tomato right here. A little bit of a light on the tomatoes. A little bit of shadow underneath them, like that. Let's do a let's do an apple over here. Maybe a nice red delicious apple. A little bit of shadowing under there, like so. There we go. So we're not using any, just the damp brush. You dry off your brush, damp brush, rinse off your brush, you dry off a little bit of the water on the tissue, and then you go into your paint. And that's how we're getting these beautiful, beautiful colors here, these rich, exciting colors. So you don't want to be using any water really to mix your mixes on your palette. You're just using nothing but straight paint. So remember, don't add any water to your mixtures. Just leave it your damp brush as you rinse off your brush and you dry off a little bit of your water on your apron or your paper towel, sponge, tissue. You dry off a little bit of that water, so you just have your brush, damp brush, and then you go in and you get your colors and you just start working your colors right in here. So we have that there. And then here we're going to go in and get straight green and blue. And we'll start doing some of our asparagus, and there's some light green too here. Let's do that. Let's get some of those. These go a little bit easier. This asparagus is going a little bit easier, right? We can see how this is kind of fun. It's just like little sprigs of asparagus. Look how good that looks. Like that. And then there may be a little bit lighter here at the bottoms. Like that. Good. Look how good that looks. All right. Now let's do some orange. We'll have our orange. Our orange Dutch oven. Our Mario Dutch oven here. And it's a little bit lighter up top. So we're going to make it lighter up top here. Like that. There's more light on top here coming from the window this way. And then it's a little darker here under the lid, the lid of the Dutch oven. So you have that little bit of blue, French ultramarine blue, just a little bit of shadow there. If it's too much, you can lift up with a tissue or a paper towel. But this looks pretty good. We have like that. And then we have some cerulean blue, like this, like that. And we just mix that in a little bit, just fuse it together. And once in a while, if you have a little bit of a spot, or you can let that go to the end. When you're done, finished painting, you can always go back and add some white paint to clean up a few spots if you kind of overpaint something or you have an issue. But again here, let's take a break now, but I want to impress the real important factor in this composition, this painting we're doing, is we're not using hardly any water. We're using basically straight paint. So when you're creating this tutorial, you're working with me, you're working along with me, and I know you're doing a great job out there as you work along with me, and I'm sure you're already having phenomenal results just doing a few things like maybe the bouquet of flowers, and you're going to sit back and go, oh my gosh, wow, look how exciting that looks. It does look exciting when you're using straight paint and you're not really mixing much water with your mixes, because how can you go wrong with beautiful, exciting colors like this? So if you can get these straight onto your watercolor paper without much water at all, you're going to be so much better off. Maybe it doesn't work in every type of painting. Obviously, if we're doing like a glazing technique painting, you might not be able to use this same method, but this is the alla prima method. So always remember, we're kind of working in two methods most times in watercolor. The alla prima method, which is this method, and then you have your glazing method, your glazing technique method, which is basically you're doing a lot of washes, letting them dry, and then going over with subsequent washes over top. This one here is the alla prima method, where you're just going in, starting in one place, usually the darkest dark. Like this vase here is the darkest dark in the painting, along with this maybe asparagus. But you're starting out with those darkest darks, and that's where you start, the darkest darks, and you work from there, and you just use basically straight paint with just a damp brush. So the only water you're really using in this type of painting for most of the 90% of the painting is your damp brush after you're rinsing it. So you're rinsing your brush, then you're drying it off a touch a little bit on an apron or a paper towel, a sponge, tissue like this. Then you go in and get your paint mixes, and all these mixes here in my palette, you can kind of see they're not puddles. There's only one little puddle right here. But other than that, these are all straight paint right in the palette, and you don't have to really worry about using a lot of water. Keep your mixes really less water, more paint, and you'll be set, because you need like rich, beautiful colors for your tomatoes, your apple, your lemons here, your flowers, your Dutch oven here. You need all of those rich, beautiful, straight out of the tube paints to make this a successful composition. And once you do that, you're going to see the results, and you're really going to say, wow, this is really a phenomenal way to paint. All right, so let me just take a quick break. I'm starting to, every once in a while we need to take a break so we don't lose our concentration, and we'll come back fresh in like 5-10 minutes. So I'm just going to stretch my legs a little bit, and I'll come right back, and we'll finish up this painting. I think we're almost like 75% complete, I would say, or maybe 60% complete. But in any case, let's have fun. We'll come back, take a break, and when we come back, we'll finish up, okay? Okay, we're going to get started again. We're going to actually, I think we could finish up the painting pretty much from this point on. We have lots of beautiful, rich, exciting, fresh squeezed tube paint right onto the paper here. Always remember, if you can try to avoid adding too much water to your mixes, you'll see that you can get these rich, exciting colors onto your paintings. So that's the main focus of our painting here today, is to try to get very, very little water. And again, you can kind of see all of my mixes here. This is the only place I see a puddle of water right here. Other than that, all these mixes are all straight paint and no puddles of water. So that's the key. So let's keep working here, and let's do some olive oil. So we have some olive oil here. And then a little bit of shadow, so we'll use a little bit of blue just to kind of have a shadow under there. And then some salt and pepper here, so we can use some, maybe this is some pepper here. On this side here is the pepper, like that. And then we have some salt over here. So this is going to be just and a little bit of shadow under there. And a little bit of shadow under the tops of the salt and pepper shakers. Okay, now we're going to keep working. Let's do our book here, might as well. Let's do our cookbook here. So this might be a beautiful cookbook we have here. We're working on a recipe, and so we can just add some red. We have lots of red in this painting, so we'll use some red over here. Let's just take all these colors and repeat them in this book. So we're going to have some orange here for our Dutch oven. And then we have some red and pink and purple for the flowers up here. And then some lemony yellow for our lemons over here. Let's do some blue for up here. And you can mix in different colors within those colors here. You can kind of just, you can gray down colors if you want. Some cerulean blue. Some cerulean blue there. Like that. So we have a cookbook here. There's a bit of a shadow on the page in the book here. And a little bit of a shadow over here. And then we can even make this like a brownish green blue. First like a grayish kind of mix here, just for our book. Like that. So that's like this. Then we could take this same mix and start to do our window frames. And if you have some issues, maybe I tend to think I'm going to pretend this is wood here. So this is like a wood shelf here. You create things the way you want to create them. Don't let things get to you. If something goes off your plan, don't let it get to you. You can always improvise and sort of work around things. That's what I'm doing right here. So I'm making my window frames, maybe some cerulean blue. So I'm going to do some cerulean blue for my window frames. And again, the idea is hit and miss. Let's try to avoid making like long straight lines, kind of like dashes, if you can imagine. Try to make some dashes. Like this. You make some dashes and things like that, and it looks much better. Purple for shadowing always works. So we're going to do some shadowing under here like so. You can add some purple into this like so, and then some shadowing under here like so. So I try to start to finish up the painting here, doing some shadowing just to get some shadows on there. We have some asparagus, tomatoes, an apple. We'll do a stem on our apple. We have lemon. Let's do some lemons here. Straight paint, everything straight paint. No using lots of water here. We're trying to get away from that. I'll use some of this ultramarine violet, which is purple, which is Winsor Newton. Ultramarine violet by Winsor Newton is my favorite purple. I think if you use that, you'll find that it's a beautiful purple that really just will always perform, peak for you and work great. You can also sometimes mix purple if you want, but that can be a little difficult if you're in the middle of a painting and you're trying to mix colors. That's not the greatest plan usually. That depends though, how much experience you have, but if you can imagine, we are really starting to complete this painting. Now what I'll do is, since we have can you see how I have pretty much all of the I think I have mostly everything completed. I might just add a little bit of purple and French ultramarine blue here to the centers of these tomatoes and apple, just to give it a feeling of like rim lighting. So you can imagine the lights coming from behind us this way, so the light sort of wraps around the objects and it's darker in the center of the objects. So that sometimes can be a help. We'll do the same thing for the lemons, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre in the center of the lemons. And we have some purple there for some shadowing. All right, looks good. Now what we have to do is, let's get in this little bit of a shadow under here, back here, which is there. Then we're going to step up and use a larger brush. I'm going to use a Da Vinci Maestro number 6, a little bit larger brush hairs. You can see from my travel brush we've been using. So what I'll do is I'll empty my water, and then we're going to get fresh, clean water. Once again, fresh, clean water if we're going to do a light wash of cerulean blue, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take some cerulean blue up here. Lots of cerulean blue, like that. And maybe even I'll clear out a spot over here. If you need to make some really good new washes, don't be afraid to just take a second and clean up a few spots on your palette. And then there we go. We got some cerulean blue up here and some cobalt blue there. I think that's good. Maybe a little bit of this just mixed in there. And I think we're all good. Let's try it out. So I'm just going to try to get some wash of blue in here. Being very careful not to disturb what we already completed, our other washes. So here's be very careful not to add too much water. Just get enough water on your brush to get some light bits of cerulean blue on here, and then carefully move your light wash around, but be very careful not to disturb and flood out other areas of your painting. That's the key. If that makes sense, you wouldn't want to start adding too much water where it starts flowing down. You want to keep these washes light, but not too much water. And then you can see I'm just going to get a little bit of wash on there, a little bit of blue. I go around my subject matter like so. Maybe a couple splashes like so, just to give it some excitement. And again, I'm going around everything, and I'm not adding too much water. And if you do add too much water, you can always rescue it by taking a little tissue or a paper towel and blotting up a couple spots if you see it start to, flood into an area where it's starting to disturb the other washes that you just painted. So that's always a rescue plan you do have. With watercolor, there's always a rescue plan. I hope you'll always remember that when you're working with me. I'm going to try to give you the best information I can. One bit of information that's really helpful is you always have a tissue rolled up and you have this ready to go. So if you see something starting to flood out an area that you've already painted and you start to see some unpleasant looking happenings going on, you can just grab your tissue, blot up the water, and then you let it be, you let it dry, and then if you have to, you can go back in and do a little touch-up, but don't feel like things are out of control on your painting. You're in control at all times. You just have to know these little tips and tidbits of information. So we have this here. This is in shadow. This is the backsplash. Blue. And so we have blue, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and a little bit of the yellow ochre and some green. This is in shadow there. And again, don't worry about it. If this doesn't, the main idea is this is an exercise, a composition of getting the most out of your paints. So I'm just trying to give it an overall nice wash of cerulean blue without disturbing anything else. So I'm going to make sure I don't disturb my other paints like that. All right, there we have it. Almost 100% done. Let's do a couple final details, but let's take a break now because we have to let this dry 100%. If we're going to go in and do a few details, you can't do them now because we just added all that really light blue wash. Does that make sense? Since we added this real light blue, cerulean blue, we added this light cerulean blue wash around the whole painting, being very careful not to add too much water. You just want a little touch of damp brush as you put on your cerulean blue because you don't want it flooding out all these beautiful colors you put on, your flowers, your lemons, your apple, your tomatoes, your coffee cup, your beautiful, we have our cookbook here with some awesome recipes in there, and we have our Dutch oven here, our orange, beautiful Dutch oven here, our orange Dutch oven, and we have our olive oil and salt and pepper. We have all these cool things here. We don't want to disturb all that with too much water. So I was making sure you really could understand that. I'm just adding a tiny bit of water and a tiny bit of cerulean blue to my watercolor paper here for like a background wash so that it looks a little bit interesting. Has a nice, like a nice blue, cool kind of cast to it or wash to it to counterbalance all these beautiful high intensity colors. So I'm thinking you're going to really be happy with the results that you come up with on this painting. I'm already sure you're actually already ecstatic with happiness that you've created a beautiful painting with tons of fresh, moist paint and exciting subject matter, right? Lemons, tomatoes, cooking things, right? Flowers. We have all the beautiful things of, you know, making a great meal and things like that. So this is just a fantastic painting to work on. But let's take a quick break. We're going to actually let this dry 90%. You can use a blow dryer at this point, or you can let it dry for maybe an hour or two. And then once it dries for an hour or two, or if you have a blow dryer, you can blow dry off this in like, you know, maybe like 5-10 minutes, or even just 2 or 3 minutes usually is all it takes, and it'll kind of dry up all the surface moisture. And then we can just do our final touch-ups. We have to do a stem on our apple. We have to do the top of our olive oil container, glass jar, and I think that's about it. Maybe a few stems we'll do in our flower bouquet here, but I think other than that, we are really in great shape. Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, we're going to get back into it here. We're going to actually zoom in a little bit, and we'll finish up our final details. So I think I can just zoom in a little more, like so, just to get a little better focus here. And maybe I'll use my needlepoint brush here to get some of these final details. So we're going to use some burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson here too, a little bit of cerulean blue. And we'll have a good, nice, dark mixture here. And I just make sure I don't have too much paint on my brush hairs. So I tap off a little bit, and we'll make we'll have a little stem there on our apple. And then here we're going to have our olive oil jar. So when we're cooking, we have some great olive oil to delve into and cook with, and then we'll have a little bit of a shadow underneath the jar here. And I'm trying to think of what else we can do that for detail. Let's do just a few more details. Let's do sap green with just a little bit of this other mix over here, which was the burnt umber, burnt sienna, French ultramarine blue. And then let's just do some, a little bit of, for our bouquet of flowers, we add a little bit of some stems and stem forms, things like this. This can really do a beautiful job of adding a little more excitement to the bouquet. That looks good. And then maybe a little more details to our asparagus over here. So asparagus has those little small kind of like leaf forms at the very ends of the sprigs. So even if we add those in, that could actually bring a little more realism to the painting. Other than that, I think we are really good. I would say the only thing I would probably do here is just scoop up a little bit of cadmium lemon yellow and put that right over the top here. I think that the lemon that I did got a little bit too dark. I thought that this would look a little better. And some blue under there for shadow. And that looks fantastic. So now the next thing we can do is we could take, I'll simply just move my palette to the side. And then we can and if this happens to be if for some reason we went a little bit large with our it's possible. Let's see if we can find a larger mat. And then you can always customize. If you want to customize, you could take 2 pieces of watercolor paper and cut them in L's, like so. So if I zoom back out again, you can cut 2 L-shaped pieces of paper, any kind of paper, and then you can use that to sort of frame out your paintings too as well, to see how they look. So right there, looks pretty good. So I hope you had fun doing this painting, this composition. And again, the key that you were looking for was to use lots of fresh, moist paint right out of your palette and not mixing too much water in there. You're almost not using any water for this style painting. This painting is pretty much a la Prima. And the only real bit of water that we did use was right at the end when we did our really light wash of cerulean blue around the painting in the back here where the windows are, and a little bit on the tabletop here, the kitchen countertop. So always remember, you can really utilize your colors in your palette, your fresh tube paint, to create really tremendously exciting paintings. This was one eye-opening, exciting thing that I learned when maybe about 8 or 9 years ago when I was painting, and I realized, wow, I can just go in and use this straight paint right here in my palette and create incredible, exciting, dynamic colors in my watercolors, in my paintings. I'm hoping you're going to try this out, see how it works for you, and I guarantee you when you sit back and look at your paintings, you're going to be amazed at how exciting they look. Okay, so again, I always mention, if you haven't subscribed, on the right-hand side below is the subscribe button, and all that does is just let you know that I've created a new painting, and you won't lose track of me, so you'll be able to keep coming back to my channel over and over again. You'll see my new paintings coming up each week as you work along with us here. So if you're excited about learning watercolor and you want to work at it week by week and month after month and year after year, all you do is click the subscribe button and you follow along. Some weeks you might just watch. You might not have time to paint. Totally understandable. I don't think everyone has always the time to paint every week. Sometimes you have to wait a couple weeks until you have some more free time. It all depends on each individual, but I understand it. You're the artist. You make time where you have to, but even if you're just watching the videos, you're going to gain a lot of information, a lot of insights. You'll remember the information more and more. So the next time you do pick up your paints, if it's in a week or two, you'll have all that information right at your fingertips because you've been watching, following along, and you kind of have all that information at your fingertips in your mind because you've been watching and you've been absorbing all the information we have here on my channel. So again, I want to thank you so much for coming by. It's a privilege and an honor that each of you come by and watch, and I thank each of you that come by for the first time. Thank you. I'm really happy you're stopping by the first time. Maybe you're a beginner and you're just starting out. Maybe you've been here for a couple weeks or a couple months. I really appreciate that you're coming by, putting your confidence in me to learn watercolors. And I won't disappoint. I'm going to constantly be coming back here week after week, month after month, and year after year to bring you all the information you need to create more beautiful paintings as you go. So have fun, enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and we'll see you on the next video. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.